My name is Melanie O'Brien, and I'm the curator and head of programs at the Power Plant. For the 6th year running, Art Toronto has commissioned the Power Plant to develop a speaker program for the fair, and we're pleased to present this year's lineup. Over the 3 days of the fair, we have been joined by 3 very prominent international directors and curators presenting on their distinctive practices. And today I'd like to welcome Kitty Scott for the final Power Talk, and her talk is entitled On Curatorial Intelligence. I have to do some thank yous quickly. Many people have helped ensure the success of Power Talks this year. At Art Toronto, we would like to acknowledge Lionel Rubinchuk and Susanna Rosenstock. At the Power Plant, we are indebted to the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, the Toronto Arts Council, and our partners at Banff Centre. Our public programs are also supported by CIBC Wood Gundy. So now to Kitty. Kitty is Director of Visual Arts at the Banff Centre, a post she has held since 2007. Previously, she was Chief Curator at the Serpentine Gallery in London and Curator of Contemporary Art at the National Gallery in Ottawa. Scott has curated exhibitions on artists such as Francis Alÿs, Janet Cardiff, Paul Chan, Peter Doig, Silke Otto-Knapp, Ken Lem, and Ron Terada, and is an agent for dOCUMENTA 13, which is upcoming in 2012. In 2010, Scott organized the curatorial symposium, Are Curators Unprofessional?, at the Banff Centre. She has written extensively on contemporary art for catalogues and journals, as well as for the publication Creamier, Contemporary Art and Culture, published by Phaidon in 2010. Scott's talk will define a notion of curatorial intelligence, as well as discuss her involvement with dOCUMENTA 13 and various projects at the Banff Centre and elsewhere, as you can see with the video playing behind me. After the talk, as per the previous days, Kitty will take questions, but we please ask you to use the microphone as we are recording this. So please welcome Kitty.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all coming out on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. And Melanie, thank you for that introduction. I want to say it's a great pleasure to be here this afternoon. I want to thank Melanie and John Davies, both of the Power Plant, for inviting me to the public program of the Toronto International Art Fair. I would also like to thank all those individuals who made this event possible. Just a note, Carmen, who's doing the tech, she was at a kind of work-study intern at the Banff Centre, so I sort of feel like I'm at home. It's quite strange. Anyway, so nice to see Carmen here. So just a little bit about the context of this talk. As you all know, the title for the lecture is On Curatorial Intelligence. During this talk, I will define a notion of curatorial intelligence and, as Melanie said, discuss my involvement with dOCUMENTA 13 and various projects at the Banff Centre. I first heard the term curatorial intelligence in discussion with the German art critic Jan Vervoort. We were talking about the field of curatorial studies with respect to contemporary art. Curating contemporary art is now recognized as a profession, and within the university system, it's recognized as a profession within the university system, and anybody who is sort of interested in that territory in Toronto knows that I think almost every post-secondary school, major York University, U of T, OCAD, all offer some version of curatorial studies. Jan and I were talking about how to advise students who wanted to go into the curatorial profession. More and more I've been suggesting that they study art history and find their way into the museum via internships and writing. I say this because there's a limited number of positions for curators of contemporary art, and an art history degree offers more flexibility. For example, there are many more positions for someone with a degree in art history, such as professor of art history, curator of contemporary art, art educator, than there are institutional positions for curators of contemporary art. While we were talking, Jan surprised me and strongly defended curatorial programs. He spoke about how art historians and curators of contemporary art possess very different sets of skills, and the latter embodies something we can refer to as curatorial intelligence. Of course, I agree with him. So what exactly is curatorial intelligence, and why is it relevant today? I think it's important to make an argument for an acknowledgement of the curator of contemporary art's knowledge and skill set. We can start by asking, what do curators of contemporary art actually do? In the course of a week, a curator whose focus is contemporary art might research and develop an exhibition proposal, make judgments on lists of artists and artworks destined for acquisition, group exhibitions, and solo presentations, visit artist studios, write texts and or oversee the publication of their catalogues, advise patrons on collecting activities, lecture to students, fundraise, discuss with the development office upcoming projects that require private sponsorship, travel to speak on panels, attend openings, see exhibitions, meet with artists, art dealers, art critics, journalists, and collectors. Central to much of this work is supporting the vision of the artist to the best of one's ability. In almost every institution I have worked in, it has been important to protect and fully support what the artist wants to do. There's always someone working with you who is looking to lower the costs of a necessary piece of technical equipment, or crop or write over an artist's image. These are small details in the larger scheme, but I believe much of the work of curators of contemporary art lies in the details. In the care of these kinds of details too, lies a notion of the ethical responsibility towards the work of art and to the artist. From 2000 to 2006, I worked at the National Gallery of Canada, where I was curator of contemporary art, responsible for exhibiting and collecting art made in the last 25 years, both in Canada and internationally. During this time, I learned a great deal about building collections, about the work of an institutional curator who manages a collection, versus one who works within a contemporary art space. Again, while my studies introduced aspects of this world to me, there was no opportunity to study how a major work is chosen for a collection, and then the technical way that it slowly enters the institution, and eventually the collection. While I worked on exhibitions for the National Gallery of Canada, the majority of my working hours were taken up by my collecting activities. Few of my peers understood this, and they would always ask what exhibitions I was working on, rather than what I was buying for the collection. It points to a bias in the contemporary art world. The immediate and somewhat ephemeral capture the imagination of the majority of practitioners, more so than the acts associated with permanence, which are somehow deemed less exciting. I studied curating contemporary art at the Royal College of Art. Looking back, curatorial school was emphatically a transformative experience. It seems to me that Teresa Gladau, our course leader, believed there was no single right way to be a curator. She was not interested in orthodoxy of any kind, but rather in the multiple possibilities the profession offered. While the course did not declare a preferred methodology, it is fair to say that I took from it a set of values or principles. These values and principles have shifted over time, but not in major ways. I know their roots are in the course, but with each successive exhibition, job, project, and text, these values and principles have morphed into something slightly different than what they were before. What follows then is a list that in some way defines my understanding of curatorial intelligence at the moment. So the first one would be, most importantly, work closely with artists and provide the best conditions possible for them and their work. Listen to them and protect their vision. 2 would be international in your outlook, but always keep the local and national in view. If you are building a national collection, make sure also to buy works, if you can, by international peers. Research, read books, magazines, journals, and I guess read the internet now. More importantly, though, see as many exhibitions as possible. 4, value the object, look at it again and again and again and again. Remain open and curious, but at the same time maintain a critical attitude. 6, write. 7, do not fear large institutions and do not be afraid to ask questions of them. 8, take risks. Experiment. Support and buy new work by emerging artists. 9, know the market. 10, be transparent when teaching others about curating and be prepared to reveal doubt and complexity. So much of curatorial work is hard to see and difficult to understand. I sometimes wonder, for example, when you go into exhibitions of contemporary art, it's really rare that you see credits for the curators, for the preparators, for the designers, for all the people involved. And you think of the film industry, that at the end of the film, how you have all these credits. Curating exhibitions it's always a team endeavor. You're always working with lots of different people. So I'm curious why all this labor is often hidden and often not named, who's responsible for what, who's done what. I think that, other curators generally know who's curated an exhibition and who's worked on that show, but outside that, when you kind of move down into the public, it's not always clear who's doing what in institutions. I also think it's interesting, in a sense, we're kind of growing the literature on curatorial studies now on exhibitions of contemporary art, and I think, in thinking about curatorial intelligence, you can think about what it means for a curator, rather than an art historian, to go back and, let's say, look at a relatively recent exhibition of contemporary art and actually go back and try to understand what happened. We know, for example, what's happened, what's happened in our recent history, but if we start to actually investigate and interrogate these exhibitions, there's still a lot we don't know and a lot we're not keeping track of, and I think the curatorial insight is very, very different from art historical insight. So the last point right now is be passionate and love what you do in the field of contemporary art. I would say that what I've just gone over is really the first stages in thinking about curatorial intelligence, and I think this sort of started a book in me and something I'm going to take a lot further, so this is really just beginning thoughts on a subject. From here, I want to move into Banff, and that's the place where I spend the majority of my time right now, where I work. So I would argue that a similar kind of curatorial intelligence has guided much of my decision-making at the Banff Centre. In the almost 5 years I have worked there as Director of Visual Arts, I have grown the program in an organic way in terms of quality and excellence. My vision has focused on the idea of preserving the site as a safe place for the artist to experiment. I sometimes refer to it as a pre-curatorial space, as it is more lab-like. I often think that artists there are kind of working on the work that curators will see later, so this kind of pre-curatorial idea is something I like. I oversee 4 strands of activity. So one is creative residencies, another is the Walter Phillips Gallery, for which we prepare exhibitions, publications, and do a public program. There are about 5 exhibitions a year. The third strand of activity is the Banff International Curatorial Institute, for which we develop conferences, think tanks, and publications. And 4, I'll just call production. We produce new works. We work with artists closely to produce works, I guess, for the world stage. I live in Banff, Alberta, Canada. It's a small resort town of about 6,700 people, located in Banff National Park. It's Canada's oldest national park, established in 1885. The park is huge and encompasses 2,564 square miles of mountainous terrain, with numerous glaciers and ice fields, dense coniferous forest, and alpine landscapes. Some people compare it to a small European country. So this is the town, and it's nestled on the side of what's called Sleeping Buffalo Mountain. So you can see the mountain that looks almost like a sleeping buffalo, and there's a little campus sort of at the base of that mountain. So that's where we exist. The Banff Centre looks and behaves very much like a small university. So this is Banff in the summer. Some of you might be familiar with Jonathan Watkins, director of the Birmingham Icon at Birmingham. And that's him during his summer residency. So winter shot of the same lake, frozen, so Lake Minnewanka. It's an aerial view of the Banff Centre. It is remote, surrounded by trees and mountains, as well as the wild animals that live with us. So many of them are dangerous, and we warn everyone who visits the centre. I think a lot of artists work in urban environments, and they don't really know what do you do when you see a grizzly bear, or what do you do when you see a cougar, what do you do when you see a black bear. So it's all different. So elk, very violent animals. So I just want to look at the first strand of activity that I talked to you about, creative residencies. And I just want to say here that there was a video playing when you came in, and that's a video in process by an artist from Australia called, let's see, she's got a very fancy name, Ramona Lola Angelico. And that's a video in process that she made while at the center. Residencies offer artists a unique opportunity to explore, expand, and develop their practice, as well as facilitate theoretical and intellectual growth through interactions with other artists and visiting faculty. Whether artists, curators, or critics, whether artists, curators, or critics. We offer the luxury of time and space for artists to create new works, research, and experiment with different techniques and modes of production. Artists are encouraged to explore all our facilities regardless of their primary discipline. One of the things that I find the strangest, when I arrived at the Banff Centre, anybody who's been there will know that there's a large amount of real estate at the Banff Centre given over to ceramics. And I sort of thought, like, well, what is this about? And it seems that almost every artist that that shows up at the center, no matter what they do, they want to get their hands dirty, and they want to make ceramic pots and whatnot. So I find this kind of fascinating, but I think it's connected to the rise of digital images and that sort of thing. The idea that you can actually get your hands dirty, you can actually work with your hands and make something. So it's a very kind of seems very popular terrain to be in. So we have two types of residencies: thematic and self-directed, or what we now call the BEAR program, the Banff Artist in Residence. I will focus on thematic residencies in the course of this presentation. So here you just see a few artists who've just been at what's called the Soiree Retreat Residency, and they've just hiked up Sleeping Buffalo Mountain, that mountain I showed you a picture of, and they're listening to Tannhauser on their portable record player, smoking cigars, doing a little bit of watercolor, some photography. So, all thematic residencies are led for the most part by artists or someone with a related independent position, such as a critic or curator. If you believe, as Willem Sandberg, a past director of the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, that artists are individuals working not so much in the present as the future, then the artist is the person more than any other you would look to run a residency. So the idea that artists are visionaries and what they're interested in will be interesting to other artists as opposed to what I might be interested in. So it's really a program that's sort of designed and run by artists. So artists form the faculty for most of our thematic programs. They're responsible for the guest list and developing the themes, design, and structure. So it's Jan Vervoort who is leading a residency at this particular time. He's in the center there, along with a panel discussion about contemporary dance and more classical ballet, I guess, in an exhibition by Silke Otto-Knapp, who's very interested in contemporary dance and performance. So each program is a one-off experiment. Unlike a university, we have new faculty each year. With occasional exceptions, I do invite popular faculty to return. I try for the most part to have the majority of faculty and guests come from abroad. The primary reason for this is the Canadian art students, who make up a portion of our intake, have little durational contact with international artists in school. At most, an international artist may visit a Canadian educational institution for a few days. So in having international artists in Canada for longer periods, we're providing an alternative to the status quo. The Canadian and international artist participants who register for our thematic residencies are brought together under the umbrella of a common idea put forward by faculty. This is what attracts them to apply in the first place. Through interaction with peers, discussion groups, studio work, and formal lectures and studio visits from visiting artists and curators, the thematic resident hopefully gains something productive from these new ideas and insights. So artists can make the most of their time while at the center. They live in what some report to be a comfortable hotel-like environment where their beds are made and their rooms are cleaned daily. And all their meals are prepared. This is the dining room, and below it is the pool and the gym. But you can see, kind of looking out into the Bow Valley, quite beautiful vista. The last residency, which just came to an end, was led by Icelandic artists Ragnar Kjartansson, David Thor Jonsson, and Austus Gunnarsdóttir, Ragnar's partner. And so what you're seeing in this image is Ragnar and David performing as country and western artists. They did a country and western hour, but again, it's a performance. And one of the residents had come from Vancouver, and she's a young visual artist, and she had studied opera music when she was very young, but never continued in that career. And in fact, I think is secretly dying to be a country and western music star. And she got up on stage and sang, I think the first time she's done this in a long time, and sang the most fantastic song. I don't know if any of you know it, I'd never heard it before, but it's called She's Acting Single and I'm Drinking Double. So artists can make the most of their time while at the center. They live in what? Okay, yeah, I've done that. Sorry. So yeah, the last residency that took place was called the Soirée Retreat Residency. It was described as follows for publicity purposes. So I invite all the artists to write a kind of synopsis of what they want to do, and we market those things to various artists. So this is a synopsis that was put together by Ragnar, Austus, and David from Iceland. The truly essential artist needs are tranquility and camaraderie. In the crisp Canadian autumn, 3 Icelandic artists who have been working with performance art, cinema, and music throughout their career, together and apart, will seek to inspire fellow artists with a situational performative residency. The Soirée Retreat is aimed at artists working with performance, video, music, painting. Who cares? It will be a retreat in the mountains for crazy work and constant intellectual stimulation. The residency will be in the romantic spirit with hikes and poetry readings. Soirees will be held once a week, where participants will share their work and obsessions. It will be a contemporary idyll in the Rocky Mountain Arcadia. The research will be situational. We will seek inspiration from the surroundings, as well as from the outside world we each inhabit and bring with us. The whole situation of being in Banff is a little performative, so why not take it to the max? Wagner and cigars. The Soirée Retreat will be a celebration of Banff, its ghosts, its banality, and most of all, it will be a time for artistic tranquility and reflection. So I'll just show you a few photographs of what that group got up to. And I don't really hang around with the artists. I don't really know exactly what they do. I usually rely on photos from photos that other people have taken, so I'm sorry I'm not going to credit necessarily each photo. But you can see this is part of Ramona's work that I showed you earlier. So this is Country and Western Hour, another moment, and you see Austus Gunnarsdóttir, Ragnar's partner, who is one of the 3 that made up this particular event. So there's a fire pit outside. People like to sit around that at night. There were a number of soirees with this residency, and Ragnar had requested that each artist come with sort of fancy clothing, evening clothing, and so people would dress up at night to do various things. So you'll just see a few outfits. This was a swingers' night. David is one of our faculty in the powder blue trousers. Daniel Wong from Lethbridge, part of the, what do they call the something singers? Somebody in the audience knows? Yeah, okay. Daniel Wong and Pete from Amsterdam. David and Ramona, who made the video. So one night, they all got quite dressed up and went down to the Banff Springs Hotel and had a few drinks, tipped the waiters quite well, and moved into one of the side rooms and held their soiree there. So various people performed, sang, played instruments. I didn't go, but I heard it was a fantastic time, and I think they were also surprised that they were able to just inhabit this space, which usually costs about $20,000 a night, for free, and just be down there doing what they do. This is Ragnar, I think it's a Marble Canyon, doing plein air painting. walk up Tunnel Mountain, I think. A couple of artists in the program, maybe one isn't visiting artist. The man in the suit, Marcus, a visiting artist from Iceland, he actually curated Ragnar's project for Venice, which you'll hear about later. Told you a little bit about that picture already. A little bit of photography, so again on the top of Tunnel Mountain. Part of the soiree residency was to make a television program, so the best best acts that appeared, maybe the best, I think that's how they did it, then were sort of moved over, and the group produced a television program, soiree TV in front of a live audience. Again, that was, I think, Thursday or Friday. Last Thursday I was getting ready to leave. I had lots of meetings. We have a new curator, and of course I didn't get to see soiree TV, but I'll look at it once it's edited and ready for kind of a television viewing audience. The well-known Vancouver artist Ken Lum has now led 2 completely distinct master classes, and I've invited him back to teach a third, Art and the Effects of the Real. Lum's residency is organized very much like a class given by a strict, intellectually intense professor at an art school. As with any institution that has been established, the Banff Centre has its own terminology. Everyone who enrolls in our programs is considered to be a professional artist already and referred to as a participant instead of a student. Ken refuses this nomenclature and calls all participants students. The Centre is classified as a non-parchment institution, meaning it is not a school, and it does not confer degrees or certificates of any kind. Ken, who runs his master class in a very determined way, lecturing, giving occasional pop quizzes, organizing crits, scheduling badminton games, dinners, and films, has a great line that he uses to inject fear into his students. I cannot fail you, but I can make you feel like I failed you. This is a video still made by one of Ken's students, Dwayne Linklater, and Amashkego Cree, who was recently at the Banff Centre. Linklater is a singer and drummer and was thinking about ways to work with music while at the Centre. By chance, he met and collaborated with this classical cellist on a new video, where he taught her one of the songs he had written for his daughter's jingle dress. The video is a document of this translation. It is an example of a cross-disciplinary work made by chance at the Centre. So often you have artists meeting dancers, musicians, opera singers, whatever, and working together. So Dwayne, in this video, you don't hear Dwayne at all. You just hear the cellist trying to learn the piece of music. I think it's also just interesting for those people that don't know, the Banff Centre has a very special program that is just for Aboriginal artists. And when I came to the Centre, I thought, this is really strange. I don't really understand why Aboriginal artists have to come to kind of one program. Shouldn't they be interested in all our programs? And I thought about ending the program, but when the first Aboriginal program took place, I learned that the artists didn't want to lose it. It was very important to them, and many of them don't know one another. It's a way for them to meet each other, but also a way for older artists to teach younger artists, and vice versa. So it's pretty important. The next residency coming up is called Trading Post. Candice Hopkins is running that, and Dwayne will be doing the one after that in 2013. It's got a nice title. It's called Wood, Land, School. Let's talk about color. So the art critic Jan Vervoort is in the center of the photo, and he recently led Why Are Conceptual Artists Painting Again? Because they think it's a good idea. That's the name of his residency. He approaches the residency format very much as a school and gives lots of lectures and seminars along with regular crits. This photograph was taken during a panel discussion that took place in conjunction with the opening of the exhibition an exhibition of Silke Otto-Knapp's work at the Walter Phillips Gallery during Jan's residency. So another facet of my work, which I talked about, is the production of new work. We recently commissioned artist Brian Youngin to make a sculpture for one of the new buildings that went up on campus. And Brian could do anything that he wanted, and he decided to make functional sculpture, and it's people who know his work know that there's a sort of sense of craft and design very much part of the work, modernism, craft design, and he created these benches that are kind of part Bertoya and part animal. They're all based on animal horns from the area, so caribou, elk, what am I missing? Caribou, elk, and moose horns, and you can sit on them. They're benches. So you can just see the moose in the back. So these are the first public sculptures Brian has ever made. In 2009, Ragnar Kjartansson was chosen to represent Iceland at the Venice Biennale. Shortly thereafter, I was visiting Reykjavik, and within about 2 hours of meeting Ragnar for the first time, he said something like, I have a dream. I want to shoot a grand piano on a frozen lake. And my response was, yes, I can do that. I had no idea if we could or not, but I just sort of think there are lots of frozen lakes in Banff. There are about 250 pianos at the Banff Centre. So if in my new job I was unable to put a grand piano on a frozen lake, I thought something was wrong. So I thought, surely I must be able to do this. So much of the preparatory work for this 5-screen projection was done in advance, but Kjartansson and his collaborator David came to Banff for a month to write and fine-tune the musical score and shoot the video. So here they are playing at different locations around Banff. The sound is kind of avant-garde country. So just various shots from the production. So during the course of filming, we decided it'd be a great idea to show it in the gallery. So these are installation shots when we actually showed the work. Since the ends coming into being at the Banff Centre, the work has had an exciting trajectory. It was exhibited to great acclaim at the Venice Biennale and then acquired by the National Gallery of Canada, the Museum of Modern Art, the Dallas Art Museum, and the Dallas Art Museum, as well as been exhibited in cities such as Edmonton, Vienna, Frankfurt, and Pittsburgh. The third strand of my activities includes overseeing the Walter Phillips Gallery. What happens there is a responsiveness to the present. We aim to exhibit new work, and sometimes we commission work, as we did with Ragnar Kjartansson and Melanie Gilligan, a young artist from Toronto who I believe is now based in New York. I would like to run through a few images quickly. So it's an installation of Silke Otto-Knapp's paintings, and when you came into the gallery, you really couldn't see these paintings. You saw this kind of gray, silver gray colors, and as you moved closer in, you would actually start to see the images. Her paintings are very faint, very silvery. In the afternoons, Silke had collaborated with the dancer Flora Wigman, who came in and performed in the afternoons in the gallery, and how Flora was performing was, again, it was a big discussion with Silke. It was a collaboration. It wasn't a response to the paintings, it was something different. So installation shots of Dexter Sinister, the Serving Library installation. This is the first time, this was kind of experiment, so the first time we used the gallery as a kind of functioning residency space. The gallery became the classroom. So the residents who were working with Dexter Sinister would meet in the gallery space every morning for 3 hours and have a seminar. And in a sense, they were sort of functioning within the exhibition. It was a question, was it a seminar, was it an exhibition? I think it was an exhibition, but it was also a seminar. So it was thought of very much as a prototype for Dexter Sinister's Serving Library. In the gallery is pretty simple. There's one artist who sort of talks about it as a gym. It's just a kind of wooden floor, 14-foot walls. And with this particular project, you can have carpet on the floor, you can pull the carpet up, have the wood floor. Dexter Sinister came in, or Stuart Bailey and David Reinfurt came in and saw the gallery with the carpet, because we thought we would begin that way, and then decided they wanted to pull the carpet up and create almost like a stage set within the gallery for this prototype of the Serving Library. So behind this wall here, the wall closest to me, was a kind of small room where the actual library existed, and the neon sort of logo for the serving library. A very dark room. Just out more in the kind of classroom exhibition space, and all the works on the wall are works that have been, or objects that have been reproduced in this ... the magazine, now defunct magazine run by Dexter Sinster. And there were various objects on the wall, so you can see a Ouija board, the circular objects, 4 or 5 of them are talking stamps from Bhutan, so there are different kinds of objects there. So yeah, paintings, works of art, silkscreen, book covers, album covers. I think that's just opening. Actually, the Serving Library is opening at Artist Space in New York today. So it was, I think, a kind of little bit of a testing ground, or one of the testing grounds, before it's gone out into the wider world. The Serving Library is showing, I believe, with another project. I think it's called Identity. Currently, we're exhibiting My Best Thing from 2011 by Francis Stark. It's a feature-length animation that was made for the last Venice Biennale. Some of you may have seen it. It was fantastic. Using free text-to-speech animation software, Stark employs Playmobil-like avatars to chronicle episodes of random video chat that are at once sexual, philosophical, and absurdly funny. It's very important for us to produce publications and books, and Frances hasn't had a lot of really in-depth writing on her work, so we've just commissioned the art historian, art critic, Mark Godfrey, to write a 5,000-word text on her, and we're going to produce a book on this particular work. The fourth strand of my work at the Centre is overseeing the Banff International Curatorial Institute. The Institute organizes conferences and think tanks and publishes books on topics of special relevance to curators of contemporary art. I've organized 2 conferences, Trade Secrets and Are Curators Unprofessional. Somebody might know this woman. From Trade Secrets, we developed Raising Frankenstein, Curatorial Education and Its Discontents, a book that offers an overview of recent thinking on curatorial pedagogy, designed to elucidate, define, and build on the current debates surrounding the subject. Various guests to the program, or to the conference, included Candace Hopkins, Ken Lum, Uda Metabauer, and Paul Chott-Smith. From this brief introduction to my work at the Banff Centre, you get a sense of the artist-led programming and how extracurricular events are integrated and all fit together. Visits to the Centre are generally periods of intense and intimate exchange. And I think it's important to emphasize that there's no expectation on the artists who come here to produce anything, other than those like Ragnar who came and really wanted to produce a project, so I don't ask them to produce anything. That lack of expectation opens onto larger questions about the place of artistic residencies and changing notions of creative or intellectual labor. What is the place of inefficiency or non-productivity? Do we need to create spaces in which artists can precisely risk failure, spaces that are removed from the market and its relentless demands for new product? That wraps up my work at the Banff Centre. Well, not quite. I've also been asked to speak about my work for dOCUMENTA 13. With respect to the team, I am one of 5 core agents for dOCUMENTA, and I've been working very closely with the artistic director, Carolyn Christoph Bagorgiev. I'm assisting with the projects for a number of artists and other special projects. I've been involved at any number of levels with respect to selecting a number of artists, writing texts, assisting in the development of various projects, as well as supporting fundraising endeavors. All of this is very exciting. However, I'm overjoyed by the development of the retreat, a section of dOCUMENTA that will take place at the Banff Centre. For those artists who do not feel the center is remote enough, there is another slightly more elusive zone, known as the Leighton Colony, located in the forest behind the center. There are 8 studios for writers, artists, and musicians. This is a great studio for a writer. It's a boat that's actually been transported, raised up on stilts. You can have parties on the deck and stuff. It's a really wonderful, wonderful site. The site provides the inspiration for the retreat residency, which constitutes a section of dOCUMENTA 13, and will take place at the Banff Centre during the course of the exhibition in Kassel, Germany, which runs from June 6th to September 16th. The retreat residency comes toward the end of dOCUMENTA, so August 2nd to 16th. Franco Bifo Berardi, Bruno Bonsil, Carol and Christophe Bagargiev, Pierre Huyghe, and Gaspar Tamash, plus one other mystery person, will be faculty for 30 participants. The intimacy is a necessary part of the formula for a successful residency. The retreat residency highlights what I've tried to place at the heart of all my programs, not the finished product, not the completed artwork, but the space of research, of exploration, and becoming. I have supported programs that raise questions about the character of our society and modes of artistic and cultural investigation being introduced today to create new modes of becoming and belonging. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions?
Hi, Kitty. I was kind of curious just if you could maybe elaborate a little bit on your philosophy of curatorial intelligence, especially working as a curator in Canada. I'm more curious in our square sort of area and some of your points that you mentioned about looking at art and being able to look, that do you find are just the expanse of our country a deterrent sometimes in being able to see everything that you might really want to like to be able to see and support?
I don't think any curator can see everything, so already that's not really a problem. I mean, sure, it'd be great to be everywhere all the time. As I get older, I have no need to be everywhere all the time. Some people do. Some people travel a huge amount, but even those people who do travel all the time say that still you can't see everything. So yeah, Canada's a big country, but I think there are lots of people devoted to contemporary art across the country. I think there's lots of really good work being done in the country, so I don't think distance is an issue. I mean, there are great artists across the country. Happen to be lots in Vancouver, I'm not sure why. Does that answer your question, or? Yeah. Okay.
I was curious because you had used a term where you
yeah.
said it was pre-curated work?
Pre-curatorial.
Pre-curatorial work. I was wondering if you could maybe touch more on that. I mean, is it something like a theory where all work that's been made that hasn't been curated is pre-curated? Or, I mean, it sounded
I'm
kind
engaged
of
in pre-curating. I don't do curating anymore. No, it's just this kind of thing. I sort of felt you're kind of in a zone. You're basically, it's like you're in the research zone, the exploration zone. You're in this space. We invite lots of curators to come out and see what artists are thinking about. I would even say to you, maybe we're in a kind of pre-art space. Let's take that even further in that I've been at the Banff Centre for 4 years, and one of the things that I've noticed about it is that often younger artists who come, they come up there, they're there for a month, 6-7 weeks, and like I said, their food, their meals are being made for them, their beds are being made for them, etc. They don't really have too much to think about. And they seem to, they start to have new thoughts, and they sometimes it's just like that little sort of spring of a thought happens in the brain, but they may not carry out the work, in fact. They may do that when they go back to their home studio, to the city, wherever they live. So it's a space. I think it's really just a space for experimentation, for thinking, for risking failure. It's a safe environment. Pre-curatorial, maybe it's pre-art. Just things I've been thinking about. Does that kind of give you enough information?
I guess when I heard you say it before, it sounded more like, kind of sort of, can you branch out to that, like where the curated, like the art is there, but it's not so curated, and so it sounded kind of odd.
Well, yeah, it's,
trying to make another take on it.
it's a kind of embryonic, things are in an embryonic phase, another metaphor, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I had a question. You spoke a little bit about your work on dOCUMENTA 13 as an agent. I didn't have the chance to see Caroline Christophe Bakarjev's talk here in Toronto.
This is really hard to hear you.
Oh, I'm kind of echoing, yeah.
Just
Sorry, is this better?
Yeah, try. Keep going.
I saw a talk that she did in Costco in Utrecht. I didn't see her talk here. I think it was pretty much the same talk. And I was... the performative nature of her talk wasn't surprising, considering some of the other agents she has on her team, like Chus Martinez or Ramundus Malasukas, who kind of have that performative take on curating, but it was very cryptic, her talk, and regardless of what you thought of the last dOCUMENTA, they laid out very clear questions in the lead up to it and what they were proposing to look at. And you mentioned there's a mystery person, for example, so that will be present next summer. So I was wondering if you could talk about this strategy of mystery or mystification, and what you and she and the other agents are trying to do, or maybe you can't because that would be revealing the mystery, but I think that I'd like to hear you address that.
I think you're making more of the mystery name than is necessary. I think it's really just a mystery name. It's not, I mean, there'll be a sixth person, and it's very straightforward. I just can't tell you who that sixth person is right now. I think in terms of how Carolyn speaks about dOCUMENTA, I think it's very hard when you have 5 years to work on a show, and she's somebody who's it's wonderful as a curator, and it's also daunting. And I think people want you to speak about what you're doing all the time, but you sort of can't release what the exhibition's about. So you're in a contradictory position there right away. And
I don't really know how I'm going to express this without being angry, but there is this, and it's not towards you. I'm going to stand up because I think I'm near the... it's that you were talking about the space of pre-art, and it goes along with his question as well. And I've been teaching for the past decade in visual arts, and I'm an artist myself, and I've curated, and I've been the director of a gallery. So I've crossed all of these territories, and what I'm beginning to wonder, it was raised in a very sort of oblique way in the panel that you had on conceptual artists becoming tactile, the movement away from idea, and the notion of pre-art. And yet we train our fellow artists to write statements and to be fully engaged in ideas and to present themselves properly, and how to behave, and how to deal with curators, and how to deal with applying for residencies at Banff and everything else. And at some point, I'm wondering when the system as it exists is going to collapse, because I do have my concerns about that. And it kind of, again, your talk today is collecting those thoughts for me. It's not representative of those thoughts. You just happen to be the agent who's making this become more apparent to me. And in New York right now, there are things that are going on with occupying museums as part of the Occupy Wall Street thing. And we know about this terrain of the upper pyramid, the upper hierarchy in the art world that has this grasp on what we are doing at the bottom of the pyramid. And as someone who's grown up in the artist-run culture of being Canadian, I feel that we're losing that. I guess that's kind of my point, is I wonder at what point that we're losing something that's really important to our identity as Canadian artists. That it's become about this kind of promotional tangent somehow. And I'm wondering how you feel about that as a member of that pyramid that we all exist within, as a member of that hierarchy who's making choices about who is going to be put forward in a way, and if it's because they've written the right statement, is it because they've done the right work, is it because they know the right people? It's a tough question, and again, it's not about you.
I think it's a statement. I think it's a statement, and it's something that you feel strongly about, but I'm not sure there's a question there. I can listen and say, okay. Carmen, do you want to put the video on for a while? Just let that play without this on. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to respond to what I took to be the feeling of that question / statement. And that is that one of the things that to me is notable about what we've seen you talk about today is the way in which you set the frame for people to have a certain kind of working condition, but don't actually demand product or don't try to prescribe any particular outcome. And I think that kind of trust in the kind of chaotic unfolding of the creative process, making that kind of a free space possible is the opposite of the kind of product-driven system that I think that this woman is protesting.
I mean, I think it's something I say repeatedly to people who the faculty that I hire to come. I mean, you're coming to not a school, and it's a different kind of place. And I want when I invite people to be faculty at the Banff Centre, I usually meet them somewhere first. I've met them somewhere, and I've noticed right away that they have a kind of sociable quality. They're funny. They like to be around people. Not all art teachers necessarily, or professors are funny and like to be around people. But you want them to be kind of generous spirits, because there's no point coming up there sort of being locked into the side of a mountain for 6 weeks with kind of unhappy people. It'd be quite desperate. So you're looking for happy, sociable people right away, and people who want to share and give something. And again, as I explained, it's really a program that's led by artists. I don't say, I'm choosing you and I want you to do this, this, and this. I just say, I'm choosing you. What do you want to do? What are you interested in? So I get ideas like the soiree residency. There are any number of ideas if you just go look on the history of the program, what's come forward from various artists. And it's about their vision, what they're interested in. And, as I believe other artists, writers, architects, other people who work in the field of the arts will be attracted to these ideas and want to come and spend some time at the Centre. So it's not about, I'm not in the, business of producing people with MAs and undergraduate degrees. It's not what I do. So it's a very different world, I think, if you're involved in that kind of thing. There's a lot of, you have to answer to government in a very different way. So, I'm not sure, and I think also one of the things I'm very lucky, or what makes this program kind of remarkable, but also I'm very lucky to be working with, is the idea that I strongly believe in tenure and those people who are tenured university professors. I think it's a really wonderful thing. I'm not against that, but what's really great from my perspective is that every program is basically led by brand new faculty, so it's always different all the time. I don't have the same faculty that I'm working with. They're always changing, although when I notice people are really great and love it at the Banff Centre, love the experience, I usually invite them back, because I know they still have more work to do. Does that answer the question?
Well, I actually now have a question.
Okay, I'll give you a second chance.
And the question is to go back to the curatorial intelligence idea. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that part of that curatorial intelligence that you're describing is about creating structure and allowing for chance. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a kind of a war story turned good about starting out with a certain kind of set of expectations in an exhibition situation or whatever, ending up in somewhere quite different. In other words, where people often tell me that they learn about an artist by making a show. They don't learn about the artist and then have it all nailed down and nothing changes in their thinking. Can you give me a dramatic example of a kind of process
I would say every exploration with an artist is like that. Anybody who knows Jeffrey Farmer or has worked with Jeffrey Farmer knows that he will tell you how he's beginning, and you kind of create some vision in your mind of what you're doing, and you come to a very, very different end, or maybe another beginning, not necessarily an end. I think that every show, everything in contemporary art is unstable, changing, unfixed, moving. You can't say that contemporary art is one thing; it's many things, and it's always in flux. And So I think Ralph talked about this yesterday, is continually learning. And again, I'll just emphasize that notion of trusting the artist is deeply important for anybody who's interested in working in this field or who works in this field. They know that it's a very important place to begin.
Anyone else?
Thank you.